All right, well, you've all been hearing from me and you're like wondering exactly who this person is. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for the BSA Design Awards 2020, What You Need to Know. My name is Abigail Gillespie. I'm the Marketing Director at Perkins and Will here in Boston, as well as the co-chair of the BSA's Marketing and PR Network Group. This is our second year hosting this panel discussion around the BSA's awards program. It's been really useful, both in terms of understanding any new requirements or changes to the program, as well as hearing directly from practitioners and jurors on what makes excellent award submissions and what makes them stand out. Before I get started, I just wanted to touch on a few things, housekeeping items mostly. This will be recorded and posted to the BSA website for future reference. So that's handy. Thank you, Caitlin. Please go ahead and mute yourself, although I don't think you have an option, so I think you're all muted. Please also feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A window. I will be keeping track of them throughout the discussion tonight, and I'll make sure I interject when appropriate with our speakers. We've also held 30 minutes for Q&A at the end of our presentations, and we know a lot of you did write in with questions that you had when you registered, so we do have those and we can respond to them. And with that, tonight we are joined by professionals from two firms, Abacus Architects and Planners and Lears Weinsappel Associates, and they will share best practices with us. David Eisen, FAIA, and Annie Steele are from Abacus Architects and Planners. David is a principal of the 8-person office based in Boston. Much of the firm's work is public community centers, master planning, and public housing and affordable housing for nonprofit organizations. The firm's been recognized with a long series of local, regional, and national awards. In addition to building an architectural practice, David uses writing and advocacy to convey the importance of design excellence in civic life. Annie has worked alongside David since 2014 as a project manager. Her work focuses on occupied renovations, as well as new construction of affordable housing, with projects ranging from $500,000 to over $50 million. Annie and David collaborate to create successful award submissions, and Annie organizes the building information and photographs, while David develops the narrative. Courtney Wilson is a marketing coordinator at Lears Weinsappel Associates. At the firm, Courtney's responsibilities include designing and coordinating proposals, creating those award submissions we're going to talk about, and managing marketing platforms, including social media, websites, and newsletters. With a background in art and design, Courtney enjoys exploring how design can connect experience through visual storytelling. And finally, Caitlin Hart is a professional program manager at the BSA. She is overseeing the BSA Design Awards, as well as industry-oriented educational presentations, conferences, and other events. She's the one who made all of this happen and keeps track of all of these things, so we know what to do when the award season is upon us. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Caitlin to get things started with an overview of the program and the process for 2020 awards.
Great, thank you so much, Abby, and thank you, Annie, Courtney, and David for being part of this. I will say I do not make all of this happen, but rather I make it happen with the feedback from you all. So, so I'll present what I have, but we always welcome feedback to make sure this process is best serving our firms. So thank you for being here. I'll begin with an overview of the schedule, especially since there have been some recent revisions, as well as an overview of the submission platform and the basic submission requirements. So many of you may be familiar with the typical rhythm of the BSA award cycle. Submissions usually happen in the spring, submission deadlines. Juries happen in the spring and summer. Announcements are rolling following each jury. Recognition similarly is rolling, and it all culminates in a really fun award ceremony and gala in January. However, we recognized that this year is already a very unusual year. So we've made some adjustments to the typical calendar that we hope allow you to spend the time and attention you want on your award submissions. So our revised schedule kind of condenses the submission deadlines. They will all now fall in August. This pushes our juries to the fall in September and October. There will be kind of one big announcement that reveals all awards given sometime in the fall. And the recognition and celebration remain kind of up in the air. So as many of you may know, part of the recognition involves an exhibition in our physical space. That most likely will not be happening this year. And as I noted, there is the, once again, physical celebration of the awards in January, and that's all up in the air. I will say that we've begun to have conversations about what the exhibition becomes in this new world order. And while we likely won't be exhibiting in our physical space, we're excited about the opportunities to do some digital storytelling that really dives deeper into the stories of the award-winning projects. Next, an overview of the submission platform. I won't go page by page, sort of telling you exactly what to expect. I'll say that it's the same submission platform that we've used for the past 2 years. It's open water. I believe it's the same platform that AI National uses. It's pretty user-friendly from an admin and a submitter point of view. So it's pretty standard. The basic submission requirements in open water will ask for entrant information, project information. A new component is the digital project portfolio, which I'll elaborate on in a moment, project description and images, project credits, and affirmations and submission. Once again, all pretty standard, not much has changed in the past year. Entrant information includes such things as contact information, which is very important for me when I'm coordinating recognition and celebration of these awards. And there also are some questions about firm size, firm demographics that we collect and share with jurors as some basic information. Project information is pretty standard: project type, project size, clients, users, basic sustainability achievements, and the project information will be a little bit different for the Sustainable Design Awards, and I'll elaborate on that in just a little bit. Okay, so the new component this year is kind of new and kind of old. So we're asking for a digital project portfolio in the form of a PDF that is 20 pages at most. And that will be the primary item that the jury evaluates. This submission requirement was born out of feedback from both submitters and jurors over the past couple of years. And while it's new this year, it really is kind of a return to how we did things for the awards. Back in 2017 and earlier. It really gives you, the submitter, a chance to tell the project, the story of the project in a more complete and controlled way. I'll leave it at that for now. The next sort of page on the submission form is project description and images. This asks for an at-a-glance description, which is probably most useful to the jury, the day of the jury, as well as a full description. And new this year for images, we are asking that you submit images, if they're photographs, with no text on them, and that you also submit them in order of your preference for publication. So the idea is that the new digital portfolio will be the primary object that the jurors evaluate, and then basically everything that's asked for here with the project description and images will be used after the fact. So for recognition and publication and celebration of the project, should it win an award. And then the project credits, project team information, which is pretty standard, but also pretty important, and will be used as well during the award recognition and celebration. and some basic affirmations and the final submission button. Okay, so getting into this year's awards categories. Every year, the BSA runs 3 awards every year, no matter what. It is the Harleston Parker Medal, the Honor Awards for Design Excellence, and Unbuilt Architecture and Design. And then we have a number of awards that run every other year. I think something that's special about the BSA Design Awards program, and that makes my job very exciting, is that we have probably the most robust awards program out of all of the AIA chapters. And we hope that having this many categories gives you all an opportunity to showcase your work in a number of ways. So I'm not going to read these all out now, but I will call out the programs that are running this year, which are Campus Planning and Urban Design, Healthcare Facilities Design, Interior Architecture and Design, K-12 Education Facilities Design, Residential Design, and Sustainable Design. And K-12 and residential design are sort of new this year, so I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. And this is just the list of all categories running this year. So now I am going to run through quickly, but hopefully not too quickly, each of the awards categories. All of this information and much more can be found on architects.org, but I just want to run through it in real time, and should any questions pop up, we can answer them. So Campus Planning and Urban Design is supported by the BSA SCUP Roundtable and the BSA Urban Design Committee. What supported by means here is essentially that I ask the co-chairs and other members of the committees to recommend jurors to me and to share the awards category and CFE with their networks. August 7th is the first awards deadline for this year. And the eligibility, and this kind of stands for most of the awards categories, is that projects designed by New England professionals may be located anywhere, and projects designed by others must be located in New England. The Campus Planning and Urban Design Awards category requires you to self-select a subcategory, either campus planning or urban design. And then the fees are pretty standard across most, if not all, of the categories this year, which is $150 for Massachusetts AIA firm members for the first submission, $100 each for subsequent submissions, and then $250 for non-members for submission and $200 for subsequent submissions. So residential design is kind of new this year. Again, based on feedback from submitters and jurors alike, we've decided to break out what was once just the Housing Design Awards category into 2 categories that will alternate years. So this year we'll do residential design, which will honor projects from 1 to 4 units. And then we'll do housing design, which will now kind of mean multifamily housing design. And historically, we have partnered with AIA New York on the Housing Design Awards, and we'll continue to do so. So this year, their CRAN group has been supporting this award, as well as the BSA Residential Design Committee. The deadline is also August 7th. So the deadlines have been condensed to 4 weeks, and there are two deadlines each week. The eligibility for this really kind of expands the New York eligibility. I won't read all the places out now, but just so you all know. And then the membership fees sort of apply to members of various AA New York chapters as well. The Healthcare Facilities Design Awards category is supported by our committee. The deadline is August 14th. The geographic eligibility remains the same. The fees remain the same as the first two awards categories that I spoke about. Same for interior architecture and design. The deadline is August 14th. The geographic eligibility standards remain the same. The fees remain the same. K through 12 education facilities design is somewhat similar to the breakout of residential design that I just discussed. So previously, we had just run education facilities design as one category, which was kind of a catch-all for both K-12 and higher ed projects. And we heard from both jurors and submitters that it's just too much to really involve in one category. So we're hoping that breaking out these categories into K through 12 running 1 year and higher ed running the next and continuing to alternate will better serve the project types and the firms doing this kind of work. So the deadline for this category will be August 21. Same eligibility and fees. Sustainable design is supported by BSA Coat. The deadline is August 21st. Same eligibility and fees, but we'll actually be asking for a little bit more information for this design awards category to align with the AIA framework for design excellence. And I won't break it down for you, and probably many people on this webinar know the framework better than I do, but I'll follow up and share a link with this. This is a look at part of the submission page for the Sustainable Design Awards, asking for design excellence information. It mimics the AIA Architecture Award submission form, and the idea here is one, to kind of assert the values laid out in the framework for design excellence, and more logistically speaking, to better align the BSA Design Award submissions with the AIA Architecture Award submissions. So the idea is that we are piloting this framework within the Sustainable Design Awards, especially because data and more information helps with evaluating sustainable projects. So it's a pilot this year, but in all likelihood, all design awards categories will ask for this information starting in 2021. And I will say it asks for a lot of information. It is opt-in, like you can choose not to answer it, but the more information, the better for the jurors to evaluate. And it's new, so I welcome any feedback about your experience with this framework. The Honor Awards for Design Excellence is one of our annual programs. It is probably the most prestigious awards category other than the Harleston Parker Medal. It's a catch-all category too, so it welcomes all project types, which is kind of fun. Every year we bring it to a different AIA chapter to jury to kind of avoid local biases and to also elevate the program a bit. This year we'll have members of AIA Atlanta jury the submissions. The deadline is August 28th. The eligibility becomes a little more narrowed down to Massachusetts professionals and Massachusetts projects versus New England professionals and projects, but the fees remain the same. And then the Unbuilt Architecture and Design Awards are another of our annual awards categories. The deadline is also August 28th. projects may not be, they're unbuilt. So there can be no promise of them being built. They may be theoretical projects. They may be rejected competition submissions, but basically you have to know that they won't be built in order to submit to this. To speak to the final and very basic third bullet point on this slide, someone asked a really good question, submitted a really good question about boards. So traditionally, the only thing that the jury evaluates for unbuilt architecture and design is a physical 20-inch by 20-inch board. And someone asked, will physical boards be required in August for this jury? And I honestly hadn't thought about that before I received that question, and it kind of forced me to decide no, which is a bummer because there's something very, very fun about the jury day. And also I imagine for submitters, seeing your project manifested on a physical board. But because we don't know what will happen with this COVID-19 situation and how the juries will run, virtual or in person, I'm going to just say no physical boards. Instead, submit your board as a digital file. And thank you for that question. And then the Harleston Parker Medal is a little bit different overall, so I'll just run through it very briefly because it is kind of our proudest and most prestigious award that's meant to recognize the most beautiful new building in Boston, or rather the Metropolitan Parks District. The deadline for nominations was April 3rd. It's free to nominate a project. Anyone can nominate a project. The building, again, must be located in the Metropolitan Parks District, and it must be less than 10 years old. The jury process is a little bit different for this award as well. All other juries are basically one full day, and the decisions are made there. The Harleston Parker Medal takes a little bit more time. So it's a series of 3 2-hour meetings and then 1 full day of site visits. The meetings are meant to define beauty for the jurors and to whittle down probably 100 projects to 4 to 6 finalists. And then the site visits are simply visits to those 4 to 6 finalists. And I'll say, again, we don't know what physical site visits might look like in these circumstances, so I'm working on figuring that out. Okay, so this once more is kind of an overview of the awards that are running in 2020. You can also find these on architects.org. That kind of wraps up my portion of the presentation.
Caitlin, I just want to interject and say that I can probably speak for a lot of people out there that we're all really appreciative of you pushing, or the BSA actually, you know, looking at these deadlines and what goes into making these award submissions, and maybe where most of our heads are at for our practice in general and where our focus is. It also is great because now I'm sure most people are thinking, oh, there's actually a chance that I might be able to get our photography done and have it be ready for these awards. So I think it's really helpful for the community that we have this extension. I want to reiterate something. I can't remember if you mentioned it, but I know we've talked about it, that it's really great because you've made it so that we can start applying as soon as the submissions open, and we have an extension up until that date. So if you guys are ready and you want to submit, go right ahead, but you don't have to wait until the August deadlines, but we now have the opportunity to wait.
Yeah, thank you, Abby. That's a great point. I know kind of been coming to this decision. I had conversations with several of our regular submitters, including the folks on the panel here, trying to feel out what priority or what headspace time people were able to allocate to awards right now. And it seems like some people are able to focus on awards and some people won't be able to do that for 4 months. So yes, thank you for pointing out the
Well, and not
submission.
just canceling them in general, because awards are really important to a lot of firms, as we know and we'll hear. So it's great that we still have the opportunity. We don't need to wait another 2-year cycle for some of these awards programs. So it's really a benefit. Thank you.
Good. No, thank you. Great. Yeah, so I will wrap up this overview, and then I think I will hand it off to Abacus for some of their best practices. And let me unmute David. Okay, go ahead, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you to the committee for putting this together and to the BSA. There are a lot of questions that get asked about design. So I'm going to talk a little bit, and then my colleague Andy Steele will pick up and talk about putting submissions together. And one thing I hear people saying all the time is, hey, we're a small firm, we don't have a marketing department, we don't have a marketing director, our projects have teensy-tiny budgets, they're often very small, we have clients who couldn't care less about winning an awards. Is there any chance we can do award-winning work? And the answer is absolutely, because that is our firm and our work in a nutshell. And I've been on juries. Juries don't give me awards for big budgets. They don't give awards for big size. They don't give awards because you have a great marketing department. They give awards because you've done great design and because you have a great story to tell. So I'm going to give you a case study here, ALLENCREST Community Center. This is a total loser of a project. $400,000 budget, teensy-tiny community center, site was a beat-up old parking lot at the edge of a public housing development. There's like no hope for this one. But for us, it was a really exciting project because it was a clientele who needed all the energizing they could get. So right from the beginning, we said, how can we do a project that'll inspire people? How can we do a project that will energize this community? And in the back of their minds, there was a question, hey, maybe we can win an award for this. And that was not the point of the exercise, but it was a motivating factor. So the first sketches tried to get something down that would get people excited. We put some energy into doing renderings that got the whole community excited. We had people chip in more money. We got kids to local high school to help build this. So we leveraged that $400,000. We leveraged all of the time and effort we put into it. And we got a pretty good project out of it. So we won a national AIA Community Informed Design Award, a New England AIA Honor Award, a BSA Honor Award, a BSA Small Firms Award, and a BSA Educational Facility Award, which isn't bad for a $400,000 project. It could never, ever win an award. So how did we make it happen? I mean, there's no secret to any of this stuff. This is some things everybody knows, but tends to forget. You got a tight budget, you got a tight schedule. You know, the next project, we'll make that into the award-winning project. You know, I just want to get out of this one alive. Every project, start thinking about it as an award-winning project. And next image. So, you know, here's how we think about things. You know, we'll take on a project with a small fee because we think that there's a great opportunity. Right from the beginning, you know, the quote unquote napkin sketches, you know, they got to have some life to them. You know, that's the beginning of the story you're going to tell. You know, is there a really good idea? So, you know, being on juries, first and foremost, we're looking for a good idea that's made manifest through architecture. You know, is the massing, is it something memorable? And the point really is to inspire your users and your clients and the public, but if you can inspire a jury and have that in the back of your mind, that doesn't hurt either. the colors, the details, you know, do they reinforce the main idea? And again, everybody knows this. You've been hearing this since architecture school. It's easy to forget, and the awards programs are a chance to remind yourself that these things really matter. Next image. Photographs are important. So early on in the project, think about the story you want to tell. And, you know, take scouting shots, you know, early in the construction process, maybe when the massing has just taken shape. And it's not just about awards, it's a chance to discover new things about the buildings you've built. You know, you see it take shape, it may be exactly what you've designed, you'll see it in a new way. The story that's been in the back of your mind in design will be enriched as you start taking those scouting shots and start looking around. And as you start thinking about the photographs, collaborate with the design team on what shot to take and then how to use them. So if you are a marketing director, talk to the people who designed the building. If you are the designer, talk to everybody else on the team. How do you want to capture what your project is? Think about the occupancy. So some projects you want to wait till they're fully occupied because they're filled with people and furniture and there's a lot of life and vitality. On the other hand, sometimes you'll walk in after it's been occupied and holy moly, that furniture is horrible. They put it exactly where you don't want it. You may want to get in there ahead of time, and much better to have the occupied building than to have props and propped people for the photographs, but sometimes you may need to do that if you want to tell the story your way. Work with the photographer. Really important. A good photographer will bring all kinds of ideas and insights to the table, but you want them to understand your insight. So again, it's a collaborative effort when you're having the photography done. Next. And there are a bunch of awards programs. Now, obviously, we're focusing on the Boston Society of Architects Awards, but there's the AIA New England, the National AIA. There are a series of other awards, and they all have different requirements, but there's some of the writing you do, some of the photographs you put together will carry from one to the next. I get emails all the time. Please enter our competition. Please enter our competition. You've already been nominated. You may already be a winner. They probably just want your money, so you may want to avoid those. Look at winners from past years. Are they firms you admire? Are you in good company? But if it's totally conceptual work and you have a really down-to-earth project, you may not want to enter. And the number one rule of awards is, if you don't enter, you're not going to win. So take a chance. And really, you know, writing is an important part of this as well. So really be able to use words as well as pictures. If you're a great writer, tell the story in writing. If you're a great designer, but you're not a great writer, get someone who can write. You really want to spend some time editing this stuff. And Annie's going to talk a bit more about our process.
So the next slide. All right, so after you have your project and it's really awesome and you want to start applying for awards, you should really start planning about a year ahead of time sometimes. The reason for this is that, you know, as Caitlin mentioned earlier, some of the awards are annual and then other ones are every other year. And especially with this year, the deadlines can actually change. So you're going to want to check back on the websites often and actually register early if you can. Once you register, you're able to get access to certain questions, and then that way you can really tailor the writing towards the narrative you're trying to talk about with your project. Another important tip is to gather all the information about your project. So you're going to want to have your project team, so that's the, you know, whoever the developer is, the owner, the contractor, and the architect, as well as having, you know, all your consultant team, and you're going to want to have all their contact information. Keep track of the cost of the project, so total development costs and construction costs, the completion date of the project, you know, the building square footage, and any particular sustainable features that your project has. These are all things that are good to keep sort of in a document, just to keep your information organized. Another important aspect of submissions is the format of the digital files that you're going to be uploading. So different awards actually call for different formatting. So you just want to check what DPI do they want, what file size is appropriate, if the file name has to be a certain name. That changes for each award. And then another thing that happens is, another tip is just to contact the photographer early. There might be written permissions that you need to get from them. That can take a few weeks. So if you leave it to the end, you might get messed up. And an important thing we do at our firm is when we have a project, we want to use not only the writing, but also drawings to tell the story. And so the 2 drawings you see here were graphics we made just to show the overall size of the project and what it looks like from the street, just in addition to the photos we would be attaching to the submission. And then finally, but not least, you're going to want to double check all your work. Make sure that the firm name and the architect name is not in the project description. That's a really quick way to get disqualified. And just make sure all your requirements are met, and, you know, proofread. Next slide. And so with all of our process, you know, making a narrative and double checking all our requirements, we were lucky enough last year to be the winners of several awards for a few of our projects. On the left, you'll see a $50 million project in Cambridge that 8-person firm did. So that one won Small Firms Awards from the BSA. And then on the right, you'll see there's a project for the New Bedford Housing Authority. It was all accessible units, 12 units, and that won the BSA Accessible Design Award. Next slide. And so we've been able to be pretty successful with our awards in our office. Abacus has won all of these awards over the past 20 years. And this includes Boston Society of Architects Awards, AIA Awards, National Association of Home Builders, etc. So we hope that this is inspiring for all the small firms out there. You can do it.
Thank you guys so much for those best practices from a small firm perspective. I think now Courtney is going to take over a little bit and share from a mid to larger size firm perspective.
Thank you for the introduction. Hi everyone, my name is Courtney Wilson and I am a marketing coordinator at Lears Wines Fell Associates. We are a 25-person firm, so I'm going to be speaking on behalf of medium to large size firms today. I'm very excited to be here and discuss the best practices for submitting and crafting awards. Next slide. So a little bit about our firm. We are an architecture firm. We lie at the juncture of architecture, landscape, urban design, and infrastructure. So some of the work that we do is in higher ed, infrastructure, civic buildings, community centers, and with all a clear commitment to a sustainable future, all while focusing on these core values here on this slide. Next. So today I'm going to be talking about the best practices for crafting submissions. So I'll start with some awards that we received, and then go into our process for crafting submissions, and then lastly, best practices, tips, and lessons learned. Next slide. So to start with a general overview, we have won a National AIA Firm Award. We've been ranked in Architect Magazine's top 50 firms since 2014, and we've received over 100 national and regional design awards. So awards are very important to us, and we very much value the process. Next slide. Specifically with the Boston Society of Architects, we've been involved for about over 20 years. You can see here a list of some of the awards that we've received from the Boston Society of Architects. Next slide. Specifically last year, we received an honor award for a North Chiller plant at UMass Amherst. So here in this slide, I've included some of the photography and diagrams that we had included in our submission. So here we really focused on exteriors and interiors, all with kind of an engaging story. Next slide. The second award that we won in 2019 was an accessibility award, and this was for a Center of Performing Arts at Salem State University. So this was a renovation project where we renovated in order to create a more accessible theater. So with this entry, we really focused on the story here and how we could tailor it to show how it started and how we got it to be. So we showed some photographs of the entries and the ramps, and just showing photographs that really exemplify this. And we also really focused on using diagrams in this submission as well. So you can see some before and after in the lower left corner, as well as on the right side. We show a before and after, and we used diagrams that we had currently had, and we edited them to make them to really clearly show how we integrated accessibility using arrows. Next slide. And then the third award was another accessibility award, and it was the Franklin County Justice Facility. And this was another renovation and addition project that we worked on. So here, the story was creating a new entryway down a path, and so we really wanted to show and use photographs that showed this, as well as editing the diagrams that we had, adding arrows and showing where it became accessible. Next slide. So what is our process for crafting submissions? I see it as 3 key steps. The first is extract and distribute the guidelines and timelines. So understanding what is required and when it is due. So putting it on the schedule, sending out emails, getting things started in that scheduling process. Researching, so looking at who the judges are going to be, and looking at what past projects were winners. Both of these types of researches are really key, because you can see what projects were successful last year and analyze which ones, what key features did they submit that were successful in that, and looking at the judges to see what their interests are, and maybe that's something that your project also has that is a match. And then begin to ask yourself and your team the questions: what is needed, what projects are eligible and the best fit, and what do you think the judges want to see? So asking these questions out loud in your meetings, in your groups, and answering them is really key. So early principal involvement is very important, and to schedule meetings to discuss solely these questions in this timeline is very important in this process. Step 2 is to gather what you already have and compare. So decide what content needs to be edited and what things need to be recreated. So sometimes you have things already accessible, saved in your files, and then sometimes you need to create new things. Oftentimes project info and firm demographics are things that you already have, maybe saved in a folder that's available for you to access easily, and then just making sure it's up to date. Project descriptions and added glance descriptions you can have created already. You can look at past ones that you've created, but these might need a little bit more editing to match exactly what the guidelines are and what they're looking for. And it also has a lot to do with the story that you want to tell, which gets into point number 3, is the storytelling. So this includes laying out the photographs, editing the description, and overall creating a story. Next slide. So getting into step 3 a little bit further, storytelling. So the first thing we do is taking images that we all have and laying them out on our large table. We see this process is very important. We're able to print each photo out and give each photo a chance to be a part of this submission, including the graphics as well. Next slide. The second step here is getting group input and tagging the favorites. So what's very important in this process is to get a good amount of people to weigh in their opinions on which images you think are strong for the submission. So we often include both the design team as well as people who are not part of the design team. I think that is a very important thing to keep in mind, because having people from outside of the design team, it gives a fresher eye to it and allows for just a variety of opinions to really kind of narrow down which photos would be successful in this process. And then taking Post-it notes of various colors, we did in this process, and tagging which ones you think are the key images to use here. Here we did a few different colors, and in this example, it was different people had a different color that were assigned to a Post-it note. But you can also do this with groups too. You could do a design team as one color and then people outside the design team as another, whatever you see fit. Next slide. And then once you have all of the images selected that you would like to use, the third part is creating the story. So deciding, what story you want to tell here, keeping in mind the project description, how you want to write that, as well as the guidelines. It's very key here to make sure you're looking at the guidelines while you're looking at the photos, just to make sure you're covering all grounds. So sometimes award submissions will want to see a certain amount of exterior photos of the building, as well as a certain number of interior photos or graphics. So having those in one hand while you also have your images all laid out, and then using this free space to just start to rearrange the photographs and create a story that you want to tell for this. Next slide. So best practices, tips, and lessons learned. Every submission is different, so every story should be different. I'm a very strong believer in this. And there's a certain magic to rearranging and reimagining. To me, it reminds me of as if you were to rearrange furniture in your living room. Doing that creates this new energy and a new space while it's still the same furniture. So the same thing applies with award submissions. So it's the same photographs that you have, and it's the same diagrams, but how you rearrange them and reimagine the story is what brings the new energy and the new life to it. And thirdly, working on award submissions virtually. So this is a newly lessons learned for us. Next slide. So the question is, how can we continue this process that we do while working from home? So we've been looking into a few different examples of what we can use to kind of facilitate this process the same way that we did in the office. And we found that the Microsoft Whiteboard is one of the more successful tools that we've found that helps us continue this process in an efficient way in the way that we like to work. So Microsoft Whiteboard has been something that we've been using. It allows us to lay down images as if we were laying them down on a table and rearranging them in any order that we'd like. You also can add Post-it notes, you can add pen, you can erase into it, and you also are able to have other people from your team join in and also work on that same board. So it's accessible for all people that you want to have input on to work on this as well. So what's great about it is that you can have multiple people working on it. You can put all the photo, it's a very big range of whiteboards. You can put in multiple images, projects, and keep it as a large database of the images you want to use. Next slide. And you can also zoom in too. So in that board, you can zoom in and you can really focus in on one or two projects. And from there, you can zoom in even more and rearrange them. You can make them almost full scale size on your computer, or you can zoom out like seen here. But this allows you to really work into the slides. You can move the images around, you can type notes. So for this process, it's a great way for us to continue crafting these award submissions while working remotely. Next slide. So this all ties back to our projects in general as well. We're focused on the human experience, devoted to the art of the building, grounded in context, inspired by a tailor-made process, and invested in a sustainable future. So we see our projects as a similar piece where we're motivated to tell the story by this tailor-made process and how our award submissions can exemplify the way our projects are as well. Next slide. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Courtney, that was incredible. Those are so many great tips in there.
Thank you.
I love the virtual collaboration. I actually think as horrible as all of this has been, I think we've all learned new ways to really collaborate virtually, and it's really brought, I think, our entire industry to a new level of collaboration, because we're finding tools that we maybe didn't take the chance to get to know. And I think a lot of us are actually feeling we're more connected than ever with how much we're collaborating these days. Caitlin, before we go to the Q&A that we have lined up, we do have 2 questions that I think would be probably great to just respond to right now.
Totally.
The first is about the PDF aspect of the submission format, which I know we've talked a lot about, but this is a great question. It's, James is asking, in order to fully leverage the potential of digital submissions, the requirement for a PDF doesn't offer ability to include GIFs or other types of digital media. And I know videos have come up in the past. So James is wondering if the digital format of the PDF would be reconsidered in the future for maybe another form of media that would allow those types of graphics.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's certainly not the first time I've heard it. I will say for 2020, we will probably keep GIFs and video out of it. However, we want to keep up with the 21st century and technology, so I will definitely consider it for 2021. I think one of the challenges of thinking about incorporating additional media into the submissions is just the number of submissions and the amount of time that jurors are able to spend with each submission. Yeah. So for some categories, jurors may have time to kind of dig into a video in addition to a portfolio. However, some other categories, for example, the honor awards categories, usually get between 110 and 130 submissions. I don't see that being realistic, but I'm willing to be convinced for next year. So thank you, James.
There's a 20-second limit to your video if you're really concise.
Yeah.
There was one other quick question from James, which is about the full bleed images, which, as we know, they're for publication. So I don't know if that helps answer it, but he's asking, regarding images with no text requirement, does this include text which delineates info on the drawing itself? For example, the names of rooms and plans. I don't think you're looking for plans to be uploaded. It was my impression it was photographs, so maybe you could clarify that.
Yeah, I will. That's a good question, and I'm sorry it wasn't clear. I think that for the celebration recognition by the BSA, it usually tends to be photographs primarily. So to clarify about text and photographs, yeah, no captions on photographs. However, it is fun to see plans and drawings as part of the design awards process. So while the majority of the image files tend to be photographs, I would say we welcome plans and process drawings that include text that helps better tell the story of the project.
And I know over the past few years, Caitlin and I have talked a lot. So if for this PDF submission, as well as these upload image separately submissions, it's really, as Caitlin mentioned, it's due to a lot of conversations. I think the marketing network group has had, other people who are submitting awards. When the first year the awards went digital, everyone was really concerned, well, what are jurors actually seeing? Because we didn't know as someone submitting. And so Caitlin did come and explain to us what jurors were seeing. And what we realized were the way that the captions, you would enter the data within the web portal, it was covering half the image. And so there was a lot of back and forth is what would be the best practice. And so having this separate upload for a PDF now gives us, as the submitters, the ability to make sure the jurors are seeing our submissions as we want them seen and controlling it a bit, because I'm sure all of us are a little bit of a control freak. So that's really one of the main reasons too for having the PDF, so the jurors are actually getting what we want to show them in the format.
Yeah, thank you, Abby. And yeah, I hope that it gives submitters a more positive experience and some more agency. And then also the jury interface on open water is not great, doesn't make the process smooth. So I hope this also makes things easier for the jurors as well.
And there is another question, just clarifying this one more bit. Someone's asking, so no text on any images besides plans and diagrams. So there's a PDF that's a separate upload that is your submission. And if you wanted to put a caption on an image, you're welcome. That's your submission. But then there are going to be 5 separate uploads, as I remember, for 5 separate images. Those are for publication and for promotion, and those are just photographs.
Close, yes. So there is the PDF, which will have its own submission page in Open Water titled Digital Project Portfolio, and that it can look however you want in that booklet. And that will be the primary thing that jurors are evaluating. And then I believe the following page in the submission form will be project description and images, which will be the description and then the image uploads. And I have kept it, there's room for up to 20 images, 10 are required right now. Maybe that's too much, so share. But as Abby said, to kind of, to give submitters, again, a little bit more agency and to also make things easier for BSA admin when we're announcing these amazing projects, submit the images that you want to see put out there representing your project in order of your preference.
Yeah, I hope that makes sense to everyone. It's really just creating a really streamlined process for the BSA and for us, so Caitlin's not reaching back out to us. So if any of your firms have been nominated or an award winner, you're all set. It was part of your submission. They have your images. They're ready to roll. So do you want to go on to the Q&A slides?
Yeah, let's do it.
Keep your questions coming for sure.
Totally.
Can I add a point about plans?
Please.
The plans were mentioned kind of in passing. I've been on a number of juries, and I think jurors really value plans because you're looking at static images, and plans help connect those static images to what the experience might be of the building. And jurors don't just want pretty pictures. They really are concerned about the experience, and plans help talk about that. So really good legible plans to talk about relationship to urban context or to landscape, interior plans about the experience of moving in the buildings. And a lot of jurors will look at the photographs and locate them on plans so they understand what they're looking at. So it's in some ways maybe, it's too bad the captions aren't easier to do, because I know I often read captions that tells me what I'm looking at, but certainly plans are an important part of this as far as I'm concerned, and I think a lot of jurors.
Yeah, thank you, David. I will add that I have not been a juror, but I've sat in on a lot of juries, and to your point, context is very important. So plans, if you are doing some sort of adaptive reuse with addition project, kind of telling what was before and what was after, just kind of clarifying the context as well as the work that you've completed or added to the project.
And sections as well. Sections are often useful. So it's at the discretion of the submitter. But if you have 20 images, is that right, to have 2 plans in a section, you have plenty of room for photographs in the submission.
Great. So Caitlin, I think this one will go to you. How are the design jury members selected for all of these programs every year?
Sure. So earlier in my presentation, I mentioned a number of BSA knowledge communities that support different awards categories. So one source of jury member suggestions comes from often the co-chairs of relevant BSA knowledge communities. I'll also say that I keep a running list of suggestions that are given to me from my colleagues at the BSA, board members, and really I'm open to suggestions from all of you. It's challenging. One of the eligibility requirements that I didn't really talk about earlier in my presentation was that work completed by jurors and their firms cannot be considered within that category. So it's sometimes a challenge for me to find the experts to evaluate the projects within a category where many of the experts are already submitting to win the award. So I welcome any and all suggestions, but I usually begin with the knowledge communities.
Great, thank you. Let's move on. Next, there it is. Crafting submissions. What is the most effective way you've found to construct a narrative for a project? And how do you balance photos and text? Do either of the firm groups want to take that on? Either Annie, Courtney, or David?
I'll take this one on.
Sure.
So I think that, so the balance of photos and text is really important. I think they go almost hand in hand. I think that it's important to have, like I think someone mentioned earlier, someone who's a really good writer working on the project description, and then someone who is designing the story as well, but to have them both communicate about it too, so you're able to really construct that narrative side by side, because both the text and the photographs are really important, and they really do play a role in the overall story of it. So I think just having, dedicated people working on them, but making sure that they are communicating and sharing it back and forth as the process goes on.
It's a great point. And I think I remember last year we had Shirley Field from Harvard, who was a juror member, and she said, just be concise, make sure that you're telling your story, you're not making us dig for it, tell us what it is in big bold letters, don't make us dig. And so that was some really good feedback. We don't want to bury the lead here. So let's tell jurors why they should be looking at this project and what makes it unique. Don't make them guess it.
I think the way the text is structured, there's a 50-word summary and then 250 words. Is that those are the requirements?
So so some form of the project description should be incorporated into that portfolio. However, in that portfolio, you kind of have the freedom to add asides, notes, captions, however you would in a physical portfolio. So I would say people shouldn't feel limited to a strict 50-word description and a 250-word description that are, just one chunk of text and are meant to describe the whole project.
But I think that's a really smart way to do it, because no one's going to read the 250 words if the 50 words aren't compelling. So the 50 words should be a teaser, get those big ideas out there and make people want to read more. So I like that, because if you have 500 words right in front of you, no one wants to read that. Also, sometimes using bullet points make it easy for the juror. Imagine you're on the reading end rather than the writing end. Are you going to want to read this? And then does it connect back to the pictures?
That's really good advice, David. And I'll just add again from my experience listening in on many juries and witnessing them, that typically the 50 words is what jurors go to. And then if they have questions that aren't answered in the rest of the submission, they'll kind of dig into the longer description, but that's usually as like a last resort.
All right. I think there it goes. The jury process. What will be different this year as we adapt to social distancing? And should the submitters know the judging criteria? Caitlin?
Yep. So I should have ordered these questions differently. I'll start with the second one first. And I will say that the judging criteria for each of these awards categories is laid out as design excellence. Design excellence is the sole judging criterion. I realize that that is problematic because design excellence can mean so many things, but the reason that the criterion is so kind of basic and broad is because we really hope that the jurors feel empowered to kind of set out what they're looking for and evaluate projects in that way. So So they begin with this place of design excellence, and then at the beginning of each jury session, they have a discussion about what design excellence means to them more broadly, and then they go a little bit into what design excellence means within the specific category, so housing, for example. I wish I could share something more concrete than that, but that's the way that the BSA runs it, and I think that is actually the way that a lot of AIA chapters run it. And the broadness can be frustrating, but I think that it also gives jurors an opportunity to be responsive to the times that they're in, and to adjust values from year to year depending on the industry or world circumstances. And then the first question there is, what will be different this year as we adapt to social distancing? So typically a jury will be a full 9 to 5 day in a conference room at the BSA with 4 to 6 jurors and myself. This year, I haven't made any concrete plans for any one jury, but as a staff, we've been told to basically plan the whole year virtually. It's possible that we'll make virtual plans and then we'll be able to be together in person sometimes. But at the moment, I'm planning on running all juries virtually, probably via Zoom, which we're using now.
Great, thanks. I think that's responsible.
Can I add a point about the jury criteria? Submitters think that the juries come up with the jury criteria, but often juries allow the submitters to come up with the criteria. And sometimes in juries, there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 really smart submissions that'll get waved around as examples for what we should be looking for. So it goes both ways. So if you're submitting, establish the judging criteria. It can only help you make your case and inform the jury.
I like it.
Yeah. All right, crafting submissions. Many large-scale projects win the awards. How can a small firm stand out with their submission of a smaller project? David, I hear your name.
Good design and a good story. And that's, that's it. And I think very often juries start out with, you know what, we don't want to give all the awards to the big projects with the big budgets. And it's hard to resist those glorious photographs and the high production values, but I think juries really are looking for small projects that make a point that leverage the money. The juries are all architects. They're in your position. So it's up to you as a submitter to make the case. I think a lot of people with nice small projects say, never gonna win, I'm not gonna bother submitting. $100, submit, make your point. And I think you'll have, if there's really good stuff there, you'll have a receptive jury.
$100 is worth all that PR you'll get when you win.
I think that's a great point, and I'll add, kind of going back to the jury selection process, that I'm not perfect, but I do my best in trying to have a balance of both large firms and a range of firm sizes represented on the jury, so that people are aware of kind of the balance of small firms. And I'll point out that this speaks about smaller projects specifically, and one of the reasons that we kind of decided to break residential design out from the larger housing category was to give a better opportunity for the showcase of smaller projects. And I'll say the same thing generally applies for our Small Firms Design Awards category, which will run in 2021.
Because this is another kind of equity issue. And I know, I'm not surprised this question is out there. There are a lot of small firms who don't feel represented. So I think it's really great that the BSA is looking at that as a kind of equity issue and a way to be inclusive. So you can be a sole practitioner, and that doesn't leave you out.
Absolutely. Did we shoot by one, or is this the one right here?
I think this is the one.
Okay.
Mhm.
For future BSA award cycles, will this shift award submission dates in the future as well? Instead of spring submissions, will we, from here on out, will we be due in the fall due to this year's changes?
And this is a question that I don't have a final answer for, but I really appreciated the question. And it's something that I'll be thinking about and we'll be making a decision about probably midway through this weird condensed cycle. I think that I inherited the awards program running on a certain timeline, but I'm kind of excited about the idea of condensing everything, because learning that you've won an award in April and then having to wait until January to fully celebrate it, it's a really long time to wait. So I guess I'll say I'll be looking for people's feedback on what their experience of this condensed timeline is. I know I've kind of socialized it with a few people and they're excited about it, but I welcome people's input on it.
Great. Before you switch to the next question, there was a live question that just came about from Stephanie, and she's wondering if between Abacus and Lears Weinzapfel, if you guys have a go-to resource or list of awards you check when looking for awards to apply to. And how did you compile that go-to list if you have one?
Courtney, you
Yeah, so it's kind of a list of awards and like keeping track of when the deadlines are. Is that the question?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have a database. We keep an Excel spreadsheet of all the awards that we like to go after, and then generally when the deadlines are. And we also keep it on our calendar, shared calendar as well. So that way anyone that's involved in marketing elements are able to see on that calendar what things are coming up. Another thing we do is we have marketing meetings bi-weekly as well, and we'll note which awards are coming up within that month or two time frame. So those are just 3 ways, both long-term and then short-term, that we keep track of the list of awards that we go after.
As another suggestion, just from our perspective, or my perspective, one great way if you're trying to develop a list of awards and curate that list is look to some peer firms that maybe are award-winning firms and check out their websites and see what awards they're winning, and then you'll start to get a good list that you can then research and figure out when those awards programs are. I found some good firm awards that way.
And I think if you're going to have one list of awards, it's the BSA awards. I mean, if anything associated with the BSA, AIA New England, and AIA National, I think are the top of the heap in terms of prestige. And historically, that's pretty much what we've done. We're now branching out because it doesn't help. It may help to win awards sponsored by industries or other professional groups. We're never going to get work from architects, but we may get them from, we're just applying to Multifamily Executive magazine. We've never applied for their awards, but we're applying because that's the whole multifamily housing industry, and we could actually get some work out of it. So we're tending to expand. As a small firm, we're at a bit of a disadvantage because we don't have a marketing director, but it's not that hard to organize it and see it coming up. So that's really good advice on the calendar.
Great. Next question. Values. How are we making this year's awards relevant?
I'll start and then I'm going to hand it off. So a lot of folks submitted some really good and thoughtful questions upon the point of registration. And there were questions about how do we incorporate public health values now? How do we really advance the conversation around sustainability through awards. I'll say that I'm all for this, kind of expressing values and relevance through awards. I think one small step in that direction is this pilot of the AIA's framework for design excellence, which takes a really comprehensive look at many different components of architecture that can impact society as well as the industry. But I think David said it best, honestly, when he said that the submitters kind of set the criteria or the tone. So I know this is kind of a big question, but I think it's really thoughtful and important, and I would love to hear from the submitters on the panel. How do you express your values in your submissions, or are there certain values that you always kind of highlight when you're submitting to awards?
David, do you want to take it that?
Well, you know what? We are really gratified that to win awards for public housing, for winning awards for projects that never should win awards because we live in a society that doesn't care about that stuff, and that the BSA and the AIA have felt it worth dignifying not just our work, but our clients, our public housing clients, with awards, I think is meaningful. So that how are we making this year awards relevant? The we is the entire profession. Mm-hmm. So do a down and dirty project and do a really good job with it. I think you'll find a receptive jury. So it's all of us together, and not writing off projects because the budget's too small, or it's a cranking out project. Mm-hmm. It's a group effort.
Yeah. I'll second what David was saying. Is it's about all of us to elevate the awards and to tell the story. And I'm pretty sure all of us are thinking about the designs our firms are putting out there and how they're going to be changing post what we've all been experiencing. And I think making sure that telling those stories are important, and thinking about resilience, thinking about sustainability from a different perspective, and telling those stories in these award submissions, because things are going to be different, clearly, and things will be designed differently. And so if we're starting now, or if we've already been doing it, to make sure that those points are made.
And I think if you look at Lears Weinzapfel's work, courthouses, you've won a ton of awards for courthouses, and that's an important institution that could be dignified with great design. And I think there's a real point there beyond just doing good work about the role justice plays in society.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments on that? Is that our final question, Caitlin? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. We don't have any other questions that are in the Q&A log. We have a nice comment from James, who said that he thinks the end of summer submission deadlines are wonderful because photography schedules often occur in spring and summer. And I completely agree, James. I'm thrilled by this. It allows us to get everything done in the summer and then submit in the fall, or right before the fall. The fall would be nice too, to have our fall color, but and then James also says that the virtual boards for the unbuilt category are great. Hopes this remains, as the boards are cost prohibitive. And he said it's a great webinar. So thanks, James. We appreciate it.
Thank you, James.
So if there aren't any other questions, I don't see anything else coming into us. Does anyone have any final comments? Or
I'll just say keep sharing feedback, please, and we'll keep improving the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sandy, Kane, and I, my co-chair for the Marketing and PR Network, our emails are also on the BSA's website. So if you want to come through us or attend our meetings, we tend to discuss these types of things quite often. It's not just for marketing and PR professionals, it's for the whole industry, just as any of the network groups are. Please feel free to join us, and we can also provide any conduit to Caitlin.
Yes.
But she's very accessible. All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, we really appreciate everyone tuning in. Time for dinner, or to go do something else other than work. So
thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, this was really great.
Yeah, thanks to the panelists.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
All right. Bye.
Bye.